Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Government Operations and Transportation and Environment Committee joint work session. We have to take up this afternoon the Montgomery County Green Buildings Now Act, which is Bill 4421. So 4 years ago, the council passed a resolution that set the county's climate goal of reducing our greenhouse gas emissions by 80% by 2027. That's 8% a year, and reaching 100% elimination by 2035. And unfortunately, we're way behind in meeting that goal. So the council added the funds to the budget in 2019 to fund our climate action plan. I hope in the future, DEP and the contractor will provide the quantitative analysis we asked for and need to really enact the climate action plan. But while we wait for that, we need to act swiftly in responding to climate change. We need to act like we have a climate emergency, not just a recurring climate worry. And that starts by addressing the county's biggest contributors of greenhouse gas emissions, and that's the building sector. The building sector accounts for 50% of our emissions, with over half coming from commercial buildings. So addressing the urgent threat of climate change requires consistent investments to tackle carbon pollution from aging buildings and a concerted partnership between the government, that's us, and our private sector. This bill will dedicate 10% of the county energy tax revenues, almost $20 million a year, to the Montgomery County Green Bank. And the Green Bank, which helps residents and businesses access funding for clean energy projects, will leverage the funds in the private and the public markets to provide much greater access to capital to support the clean energy financing needs in our county. This is especially timely now, because Green Bank funds can be matched with state and federal funds that are now available due to the federal infrastructure bill. And thanks to the leadership of our Senator, Chris Van Hollen. The Green Bank is an amazing tool, but it has been underutilized. It's like the electric Ferrari in our garage. If it's funded properly, the Green Bank could be a powerful tool in the county's toolbox to move forward public-private partnerships to reach our climate goals, just like it is in DC, where they have initially capitalized their Green Bank with $100 million in 2017. It can also help us address our equity and our environmental health issues in our multifamily buildings. It can help us lower our energy bills for our renters and drive economic activity for the clean energy sector. The Montgomery County Green Buildings Now Act will offer a critical financing tool for our property owners and lead to a major reduction in our greenhouse gas reductions. So I'm really looking forward to today's discussion. I would just add, this is not an administrative bill. This is the most significant new investment in fighting climate change and the actual reduction of emissions that has ever been put forward by the county government. So I really want to thank Councilmember Friedson for his partnership on this, for GO Chair Novato for being the first co-sponsor, and for all of the co-sponsors for their support, because we are good at talk. We declared an emergency in 2017. This is all about action. So Chair Novato, would you like to add any remarks, and would any other members of the joint committee like to add any remarks before I pass it to our staff? Councilmember Friedson.
I was going to yield to the joint chair, and then I'll chime in as the co-lead of the legislation.
You raised your hand. Sorry, Councilmember Novato.
No, thank you, Councilmember Hucker, Chairman Hucker, and I want to thank the team as well. This joint committee session, I think it's so important. Many of us have said time and time again that, the pandemic has accelerated a lot of things. Climate change specifically is something that it's on everybody's minds. And, when there was that increase to the fuel energy tax, I think that everybody understood that this was not something that could be sustainable. And at this moment in time, I think it's absolutely appropriate that we shift and better direct the use of these funds, because we're trying to really do everything possible. And so I'm glad that this is coming before us. Happy to be the first co-sponsor, and really can't wait for us to be able to move this forward. I know Councilmember Reamer has an amendment that I think it's very timely as well and very appropriate. And so just want to thank everybody for all the collective work on this very important issue.
Terrific. Thank you, Councilmember Friedson.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate your leadership and partnership on this. It's a really important bill, and I think we talk a lot about the example of our power, and this is an example of us using the power of our example to be able to commit resources and dedicate ourselves to practice what we preach and to actually follow through on the significant climate goals and emission reduction standards that we have set for ourselves. There's a lot more work to be done. This is certainly not going to solve every problem, and frankly, it should only be seen as a down payment. As part of the financial commitment that we are going to have to make to tackle this crisis, it has to be something that we aren't just concerned about, but that we commit to, and we have to commit to it with dedicated resources. The fact that this is dedicated, it allows us to leverage private dollars. As noted, it allows us to leverage available public resources at the federal and state level that are going to become available, and it allows us to bring the private and public sectors together, which is how we need to tackle the climate crisis, and really needs to be a big part of our model moving forward. We talked previously about raising the bar and the standards that we have in order to reduce our carbon emissions and tackle the climate crisis, and we need to be providing ladders to help people to actually get there. And this is one tool, one opportunity, one way to do that, to make it just a little bit easier for residents and businesses to actually follow through and do what we know they want to do. I don't believe that retrofits aren't happening as much as we would like, as quickly as we would want, because residents and businesses don't want to do it. There are obvious benefits specifically related to the climate and energy reduction and emission reduction, but also in terms of cost over the long term. The reason why most residents and businesses aren't able to do these projects is because they don't have the upfront lump sum costs that are required in order to make this happen. That's what the Green Bank is going to help us do. It's really to fill this significant gap that exists in the marketplace. That is the role of government. That is the position that we should be in. And this is an example where we can really lead in Montgomery County to make sure that we're actually following through on the commitments that we've made. So appreciate the ability to move this bill forward with you, Councilmember Hucker, and look forward to all of the support that we have already received from our colleagues as co-sponsors, and look forward to some refinements in this joint committee session, and then passing this bill as quickly as we can so it can be implemented to start the next budget cycle. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Anyone else that wants to jump in before? Oh, Councilmember Reamer, sorry.
Thank you. Excited about this bill. It's really great thinking, and I appreciate building on the infrastructure here of the Green Bank. I'm really enthusiastic about this because finance is a key part of making the transformation that we have to make in our transportation sectors and our building sectors to support electrification. And as a climate activist, I am often depressed about the trend line. You know, we hear more bad news than good news. But in the past year or two, I have started to feel for the first time in my life that there is actually a path forward, that there is a vision of how we fundamentally change this and begin to reduce the emissions that are driving climate change and ultimately stop them and reverse these trends and get back to a healthy in a healthy direction. And that's called electrification. Electrification is about getting everything that uses fossil fuels, replacing all fossil fuel sources with clean energy sources. So all buildings, every time we plug in a phone or flip on the lights or turn on the air conditioning or the heat, having that power source be clean energy, wind and solar, and then getting all of those gas sources and coal sources out of the grid, clean up the grid, have 100% clean grid powering all buildings so that all energy consumption is clean. And then the same thing with transportation, getting all vehicles completely off of gasoline and diesel, all dirty fossil fuel sources, having them plug in clean electric, clean hydrogen, walking, biking, public transportation. This is an achievable vision, and it's one that doesn't require people to suffer, to live deprived lives, to give up the lifestyle choices that they might want. And that is what is exciting about it, because there is a path forward that can earn political support, but it requires money. And that's where this comes in. We've got to finance that transition. We've got to make cheap money available for the building owners to purchase the equipment that they need, for homeowners to purchase the equipment that they need, for car owners to purchase the equipment that they need. And government must play that role. So it's worth it to spend as much money as we're spending on COVID to finance that transition, help our economy transform, and get climate change under control. And I hope that this country will tackle that, and I'm pleased that we're able to be part of that solution here in Montgomery County. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Reamer. Councilmember Katz.
Very much, Mr. Chair, and I sincerely appreciate everything that's been said. I, too, am a proud co-sponsor of this legislation, and I'm not going to repeat everything that was said, but I think bottom line on this is if the funds aren't there, then we're not going to get there. And this is what we need. This is a good, strong first step for us to get there. We needed to do it. We need to do it now. And I'm very, very proud that I'm co-sponsoring. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Katz. I want to call on Tom Deo at the Green Bank. Thank you for being here, and Steve Morrell as well. It was great to be with you at your amazing event last week. I didn't get a chance to talk to you after because there were so many attendees who I had a chance to talk to, but that was fabulous, the event you did with Bethesda Green. You must have had 60 or 70 people there who are in this space and wanting to work with us to build a better future for the county. But I want to call on you, but I do want to I didn't mention the support of this bill by the Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce and the Apartment and Office Builders Association. I'm really grateful for their support as well. I know everybody couldn't be here today, but I feel more confident moving forward knowing that they're behind us as well. Mr. Deo, thank you for being here. Do you want to run through your presentation?
Thank you, Chairman Hucker. Thank you, Chairman Navarro. We appreciate you giving us the chance to present here, and we appreciate all the council members and interest in this and support as it goes forward. So I want to walk through this brief presentation to just sort of identify how we're there to be a support to that vision that you so well articulated, and where we can be that player in order to achieve those outcomes that are out in the market. So I'm going to go quickly through this, but we give a little bit of context and then look forward at where we think we can play in this game. So, for those who don't know, we are an independent 501c3. We were created by the county by legislation. We were created in 2016. I also do want to note that we have one board member on this call, Bert Hunter. He's our secretary now. He was our first chair, and he's also the chief investment officer at the Connecticut Green Bank. And I will say the Montgomery County Green Bank has benefited well from having Bert as a part of our board leadership. But we are run by an unpaid 11-member board of directors, and we do operate under a pretty strict governance structure, just so that you understand that, we do have a lot of oversight to us. We have a number of committees, including an executive committee that I meet with bi-weekly, and well as those that oversee our operations, our finance, our investments. And so we have considerable oversight. All the boards participate in those committees. We also have guidance on documents. We have an annual work plan that's approved by the board every year that meets up against the missions and our target goals. We also have our annual budget approved by the board, and any changes to that have to go back through the board. We actually do semi-annual reporting today to the county under the contract that we have with the county. And then we also annually report to the county and the county council. And from a financial standpoint, we've had financial audits since our first year, FY17, and our most recent one has been approved and is being completed right now. And then as a staff, we are 7 people, and we are dedicated to this vision and this business. So if you go to the next slide. So just to level set, why are we here? What's the market? Well, the market was risk, right? There was the risk in the clean energy financing market that the traditional partners out there found, right, across all spectrums of the market. And the result of that was there was a lack of flexible and affordable capital out there because of that risk perception. The other was there was missing market segments. Not everybody could participate, even though they wanted to. A lot of small, medium-sized businesses might have wanted to participate in this, but they don't have the resources of the large corporations. Same thing with multifamily, affordable housing, and a lot of businesses just didn't understand what needed to be done. And then more recently, we got market drivers, and you'll see these come playing back later in this presentation, but rising energy prices are out there. They're happening now. That's going to create a greater demand as people see how their energy burdens are increasing. And then there are the county climate goals that exist and the accompanying documents that go along with that, plus the climate action plan that sets out quite a number of actions, as well as the building energy performance standards, if enacted, that create a certain amount of requirements and milestones that need to be met. And the benchmarking data already suggests there's hundreds of properties that need to improve. Next slide. And then what's the solution? Well, that's where the Green Bank comes in. So our role is to take the funds you provide to us, which are limited in their capacity, and look for where risk is, design risk structures, attract private capital in, or what one might call other institutions' money, so the county can have more clean energy finance. And our target is to take each dollar of that public funds and turn it into $3 to $5 of private capital, or what we would call leverage. That leverage then creates the capacity and capability for the energy efficiency, renewable, clean energy improvements to be undertaken by the residents and businesses in the county. And what do we get out of that? We get significant outcomes. We get energy savings by those properties and those owners. We get reduced greenhouse gas emissions. We generate clean energy jobs, and all those properties are improved, many of them for health reasons. And the last thing is, what do we do? The key leverage we get out of this, the key leverage factor, is that funding sits on our balance sheet. And any financial partner out there that we work with is going to look to that balance sheet to understand they have confidence that we can meet the agreements that we enter into. Next page. So this is what leverage looks like. I know it looks complicated, please, but often graphics can tell a story. But we achieve leverage by using that capital in many different ways. It's not a one-size-fits-all type approach, but in each way we do it, we look for partner capital to be in the equation, and then Green Bank capital comes in there in different percentages or different ways in order to create more flexibilities. We start on the left and we try to make sure that the highest capital of the private capital gets used, but oftentimes we find that that's not necessary, and they can't get there. So we have to bring a little bit of our capital in, and then sometimes we co-lend. And then other times we have to be a more significant player because the market isn't quite there. There's market segments that can't be answered. So we play in these different arenas. We create flexibilities in order to serve the market. And then the other factor with capital is, because of the way we get it, we put it out there, we get it back. And when we get it back, we recycle it again. So there's a multiplying effect to capital that we also get out of this. So it's not a one-time out and done. It's a one-time, it goes out and it comes back. Most of it, we hope, because we are taking risk positions. And the last thing it does is it allows us to put it on our balance sheet and attract other people's money onto our balance sheet. And I'll come back to that later. Next page. And so when we took all those resources and turned it into those uses, we ended up with a suite of products that we've put into play. They support homeowners. We got several that support the commercial sectors. And this is how we are able to then play with the market and help them sort of find the right tools in order to achieve their goals. And we also operated in the community solar arena as well, and operating there and working on other projects. But what we do is try to work with the properties, try to find out where they are, and then find the best solution in order to help them move forward and achieve their scope of work. Next slide. So the other thing, just beyond financing, we've also done other things of value to the county we just wanted to call attention to. One is we've been helping grow the clean energy marketplace. We found there was gaps out there in education and in support of the marketplace. And so we've gone about doing a whole series of education and engagement initiatives. We've done 100 presentations over the last year, all about that to educate the population, educate the businesses on how to undertake this work. And we've also done technical assistance pilots because we realized some parties needed game plans in order to actually accomplish their goals. We've tested this out and we found real value in the market for doing this and getting people on a path to undertaking efforts. And the last thing is we're becoming a reservoir or a place that people come and inquire about where they can go to find contractors and other energy sector improvements. And we're connecting, we're being a business development agent as well. Next slide. And the other place of adding value is on equity. We given great attention to equitable access of opportunity. We focused on LMI households in many different ways in our community solar efforts. We've done considerable outreach to faith-based congregations across the spectrum, and you can see that map there of where we've been able to touch base with them. We've done affordable housing solar, the technical assistance pods, and we're working to get a low moderate income rooftop solar project off. But we've been intentional and focused on equity as part of our work. Next slide. So if we're looking forward, what could be some of the major markets in which the market drivers I talked about earlier could actually create demand? And we see it across a spectrum of marketplaces, right? On the commercial side, there's 750 properties in the benchmarked database now, and that's going to be growing over time. And that represents a significant number. And when you look inside that, you can see a number of them, hundreds of them need to improve their energy footprint. There's 100,000 properties that are pre-1980 or more. Well, all those are going to, if they haven't improved their systems, need to think about adding and improving their energy efficiency. Affordable housing, there's 150 multifamily rental properties out there, and there's 100 affordable condominiums with more than 100 units. There's 100 more, even more, less than that. And on the nonprofit side, there's 300 faith-based organizations in the county. We've got 138 private schools, tons of more of nonprofit-based organizations that all could use support. And then when you look inside the climate action plan, there's places of need and places where the Green Bank's been identified. EV infrastructure is one of those places, and we've done our first deal in terms of supporting that. Resiliency, which is about making sure the properties stay up, stay current. They can operate when the grid goes down. That's an important component to the work we would do as well. And then there's a lot of climate adaptive technologies and efforts that are identified in the plan. On the equity, as I mentioned, we need to focus on the LMI households and on the people of color, and that's a major intentional area that we need to focus on. And solar cuts across all those, but is on top of energy efficiency, but we're operating in residential, community solar, and commercial. And then lastly, as I mentioned, we do grow the market activities, and those are only going to need more as the market drivers create more demand. Next slide. So just to give you a feel for what that impact could look like, if $18 million was turned into 3 to 5 times, that's 60 to 90 million of financing that we attract into the market, what might that look like in delivery? And we just sort of took a hypothetical here, what that could look like. Clearly, specific demand response is going to be dependent on demand, but this is based on what we've been doing to date, what might be the possibility, right? So commercial and industrial properties, 15 to 25. Condominiums, 5 to 10 of those we could be working on. Multifamily, 5 to 10 of those. Faith-based, 10 to 20. Community solar, we could move from 1 to 3 different projects forward. We got dedication on the LMI households, EV infrastructure, clearly to drive response there. Pre-development, we're finding this is an important place to play because properties sometimes can't move forward without some upfront capital, and we want to introduce this and get maybe 5 properties going there. And then significant grow the market activities in order to sort of advance things from continuing our educational efforts, doing the outreach and close in engagement to move those communities forward, as well as technical assistance efforts. And then the Green Bank does need support in order to sort of achieve these outcomes, and that's sort of an administrative component to it. But this is a hypothetical, but we wanted to give you a sense of what impact could look like given this resource. Next page. So what are the 2 pages left? What are the ways in which the Green Bank could use these funds? One is to build the capability to meet the demand. As I just noted, we can expand the market, the capacity to serve through leverage. That 18 million could turn to 60 to 90 million of capacity. It gives us a balance sheet. It improves our balance sheet. If there's a regular, constant sort of commitment, as we find with DC Green Bank that was mentioned, Connecticut Green Bank gets this, there's more of a regularity of that. We get more benefit from that in working in the marketplace and attracting capital. And as Chair Tom Hucker mentioned, there is this bill out there for the National Climate Bank. We have more resources on our balance sheet. That's a more attractive to get that on. It's going to look for that strength of that balance sheet. It's loaned capital, so it adds to us, but it doesn't displace the other capital. And then we take that and we're going to turn it into a lot more activity, both in terms of bringing other players into the market, other financial players, as well as creating more flexibilities in our products. Right now, we're a little constrained with the limit on capital we have to create those flexibilities, but when we have a more unlimited amount, or not unlimited, but a larger recurring source, we can create more flexibilities that we can direct to the marketplace. And then we can use it to do more creative financial structures, such as in the bond market. Next page. This is the last page. And then we can also use it to advance some of those equitable clean energy economy activities, growing the marketplace, continuing to advance the education of the technical assistance, certainly assure equitable access. We want to dedicate a portion of the funds to make sure that that happens. Expand the workforce. As we mentioned, this is a jobs creating opportunity. We want to work with the workforce development agencies in order to create opportunities in the job sector, and then establish our own infrastructure to make sure we can deliver on these goals. So hopefully you got through that, and there we go. I appreciate the time. Thank you. Return it back to you, Chairman Tucker. You're on mute.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Tom and Steve, for being here and for sharing all your expertise and your hard work. I continue to be really impressed with what you've been able to do with such a small amount of funding from the county. And I'm really excited about this legislation. We have two amendments, I think, in front of us. Let me call on Councilmember Friedson to explain the first one.
Sure, thanks. We have an amendment to address the commitments that we just heard about, actually, in terms of making sure that we are retrofitting a representative sample of our community, and we are focusing, throughout our community, and that just like the county would be focusing our efforts, and the Green Bank is attempting and has been focused on these efforts, that we actually put that into writing, and we actually put that as part of this commitment. So it would add the following after line 23, and this is really an amendment in consultation with Chair Hucker, although I'm going to move it forward on behalf of both of us, but it would be after line 23, it would add item F, and it would include restrictions on county funding. The Green Bank must use direct appropriations from the county as follows. Number one would be 20% of the funds must be used to support the bank's activities to promote racial equity and social justice in the county. And number two, 15% of the funds must be used to reduce the cost of energy projects undertaken by property owners by a loan subsidy, interest rate buy down, technical assistance, pre-development, blended capital, or other similar tools. And so I'd like to move that forward. The intention here is to make sure that we recognize that some of these projects are harder to make work than others, and that we need to make sure that we are equitably addressing these projects and making sure that we are working in the community and throughout the county to make sure that we are delivering these projects where they will have significant impact on our residents. So I'll move that now.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Council Chair Novato. Any discussion?
Yes.
Councilmember Dreamer.
Councilmember Glass volunteered first, so I'll defer to him.
Sorry, Councilmember Glass.
I voiced, you raised your hand, audio visual. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Councilmember Friedson. I appreciate the amendment. I too have been looking at best practices from around the country and saw that a similar fund used in Portland has 20% that is also dedicated to equity emphasis areas. Not exactly sure that the language you used is that similar, but the question I have is, one is 20% that you just said for racial equity goals, and then 15% for building retrofits. Is that correct?
Yeah, 50% would be to reduce the cost of energy projects. So meaning that it wouldn't necessarily be exclusively 15%, not exclusively for the direct loan. I can have Mr. Deo or the Green Bank explain the difference, but we want to make sure that we're providing opportunities for more people and businesses, and small business and small nonprofits that lack the resources. That's the whole point of this effort, to be able to do this. And so other tools, not necessarily exclusively lending, direct lending, to dedicate to that will help to expand the access to these financial tools. I don't know if Mr. Deo, maybe you could double down on that point to explain.
Sure. Sure. So the idea is to use that in a more expendable way in order to sort of underwrite the loans, make them a lower cost. Where there's certain situations in which that would be a benefit down to the end user, where the cost of the financing may be too much for the end use and the energy savings. But it gives us flexibility to use that not just in a capital way, but in a sort of underwriting subsidy way in order to make the capital more feasible.
Sure. No, I appreciate that explanation. With regard to the equity area, which absolutely support, just trying to figure out how to quantify that, right? According to Portland, that they actually, their agency creates a workforce and contractor equity plan. Would we require that a similar document outlining what actually what equity would mean to the Green Bank so they could demonstrate that? Just trying to figure out, right, what equity would mean in terms of these projects and how to define it.
Yeah, it's a terrific question. So I'll just tell you, we originally were looking at directing specifically to particular residents and particular businesses, and we got advice from legal counsel that there was some legal concerns with that because of the need for disparity studies and other aspects. And so this was the suggested language and approach in order to accomplish what I think we all were hoping to accomplish. I don't know, Mr. Drummer, if you wanted to clarify that.
First, do you want me to, I can share my screen and put up the actual.
Sure, please.
Yeah, I don't have the text either, so if you want to do that, Mr. Drummer, that'd be great.
While we're doing that, can I just, because I know there was another bill where we did add some additional incentives, and we used the term of equity emphasis areas, which I think is what Vice President Glass was quoting.
That's the point, right.
So we've used that already, and I'm wondering why it would not be feasible to do that with this particular bill.
The language that was originally suggested was to use 20% of the funds for minority-owned and women-owned businesses. That's an affirmative action plan that you'd need to put in a lot more effort and detail to. The disparity study doesn't really cover that. And our disparity study is being updated at the moment. Black cat across your desk there.
I don't mean to interrupt. If there was unless there's any concern with it, if there was a friendly amendment for the equity emphasis areas, because as we were discussing this, I had the same thought that Councilmember Navarro, who worked on the equity emphasis areas at COG, where she's now taking over as the corporate board chair, and we certainly included that in the green energy building tax credit legislation where we did the technical improvements, and Councilmember Navarro Chair Navarro, in this context, had the suggestion of adding that. So we went beyond technical and made that important substantive change. Is that something that would be appropriate to do here, Bob?
So instead of looking at the number one there, 20% of the funds must be used to support the bank's activities in equity emphasis areas of the county. Is that what you're?
Yes, this is the line that I was leading us towards. So I appreciate all the mind reading by my colleagues who know me well and the leadership that they've had in this previously. Ms. Navarro, absolutely.
Yeah, I apologize. I'm just saying it's a friendly amendment if that's what you and Council Chair Navarro are suggesting.
Right. That's what I was just trying to figure out. Right. What the definition there was. So. Absolutely.
So then it would read like this. Is that what you're suggesting?
That looks good to me.
That reads fine to me.
Yes, that works for us. That's great.
I was the mover, so I would accept that as a friendly amendment as suggested by Councilmember Glass, and I'm assuming that Council Chair Navarro is the second, because she would have to accept it too, but would see it as a friendly amendment since it's really her suggestion as well.
Absolutely. This is great.
Excellent. With that, I yield back, Mr. Chair.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion?
Just had a quick question, if I could.
Oh, Councilmember Reamer, I beg your pardon.
Thanks. I just want to
Get
make
everybody
sure,
on the same screen.
Mr. Deo, you're familiar with the county's equity emphasis areas?
No, we'll have to learn about what those are.
Because, okay,
Oh, well, they're well documented by the Council of Governments, Tom, so
Yeah, we have
Okay,
that
so
information.
not hard to find out, and our able staff can help you with that.
okay, well, just to be clear, there are certain, we've mapped a number of areas around the county. There are places like downtown Silver Spring, I believe, that are equity emphasis areas. So
Oh,
hopefully,
so it's a geographic area.
it's a geographic area. So this is different. So you would need to find projects in a set of geographic areas in the county, and then ensure that 20% of your funds are used to support projects that are in those locations. I don't know how prospects are, and I'm not sure what penalty would be for non-compliance. Obviously, you would seek to comply, but as drafted, it could become a little bit of an issue if you weren't able to comply. Then I suppose the funding sort of stacks up. So, any comments here, just generally?
If I may.
Please, yeah.
Yeah. So I greatly appreciate it, and thank you for asking that question. I assumed areas was a broader named thing, not a geography. So thank you for that clarification. We do operate, and we have been supporting equity across the county. There's quite a number of low moderate income properties, affordable housing properties that exist throughout the county. And, the county, I think, has actually emphasized dispersion of that. And I think, those families in those places are in equally amount or, as in need of our resources as in specific geographies. If we could have an opening in here to be able to support, properties that also serve that, that would certainly allow us to make sure that all residents who fit that equity need are covered. Because it all isn't in just a particular part of the county and I appreciate.
So, for example, that's a great point, right? So for example, if you were to finance a community solar project that was providing discounted rates for tenants in a community in an equity emphasis area, I think actually that would, I'm sure that would qualify according to the language here, but
It may not, though, because we don't know where the subscribers are, and that's a market-driven one. But they would be LMI subscribers, but they may still be not in the equity areas, right? Okay. So,
I think
you could avoid the issue of not being holding up money because you can't get 20% of the money on. So, holding up projects is to change the must to a should. So it's not an absolute, it's just a goal.
Can I
and by the way,
jump in.
Just a last comment, like affordable housing ideally is distributed throughout the county, some of it in areas that are not equity emphasis areas, because that's what we want. We want affordable housing in high income areas. We would want you to be able to retrofit, finance a affordable housing project in downtown Bethesda. But you wouldn't be able to count that towards this 20% under this language. So just think some refined parameters here could be valuable. Okay. I'll hit, back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Reamer. I think that's a strong, a well-placed concern. But as one of the members of the board of the Council of Governments, and congratulations, Councilmember Navarro, for being chosen as our corporate president of our corporate board recently. Let me just assure everybody that the maps for our equity emphasis areas, and if I could, if I had access to a chat feature here, I would share the map with you. They look alike, our equity focus area, they look a lot like, the census tracts that you would guess. There's a lot in downtown Silver Spring. There's a lot all the way up the US 29 corridor. There's a lot up the Georgia Avenue corridor, including Wheaton and Aspen Hill and Glenmont. There's a lot in Rockville. There's a lot in Gaithersburg and beyond that in Germantown. And again, we're only talking about 20% of the funds. So I think it's a surprise to no one here that a lot of our aging building stock that need these type of upgrades happen to be in some of the oldest communities of the county on our old rail and highway lines. And those are exactly the places that we want to invest to address our climate emergency. So I would just, I'll defer to Tom, but I would just guess there's not going to be any, it's not going to be hard at all to make sure we're spending 20% of our funds in those areas, which is the ones that need it the most.
Yeah, I'd like to interject and say there are 49 equity emphasis areas in the county. So it is pretty widespread. And also remind ourselves that that's what the definition of equity actually is. It means that we are going above and beyond to be strategic, to invest and emphasize even more our kinds of address policies where we know that there are these inequities. And so the fact that we are actually saying that these 20% must be used, it is a way to force ourselves to ensure that we are targeting these areas. And I'll be honest with you, I think 20% may not even be enough, because when you do look at the 49 equity emphasis areas, as it was mentioned, they're the same areas that we saw during the pandemic. We could see it all throughout. The same areas that even the school system has identified forever, which is very large swath of our county. So that does not concern me. And it is 20%. It's not like we're saying it's everything, but it just means that we're going to be even more targeted. So I just think that, it's widespread, and it is exactly the definition of equity, is to say that we must target a particular amount to these areas, because if not, then it becomes a little bit too wishy-washy and we don't get to these goals of equity.
Chair.
Thanks, folks. I'm sending you the map, since I don't seem to have a chat feature, but I'm emailing everybody the map from the Council of Governments with the equity emphasis areas. But I know all of you are experts, and this will come as no surprise to you. And these 49 are distributed exactly as you might expect they are across the county. So hitting the 20% goal, I think, is very easily achievable.
Mr. Chair, can I speak in the meantime?
Yeah, sorry, Councilmember Glass and Councilmember Freed.
I wholeheartedly agree with the sentiment that Chair Navarro just shared, and quite succinctly, this legislation and the funding shows our commitment to combating the climate crisis, but this amendment specifically shows our commitment to environmental justice and making sure that the equity emphasis areas and the people in those communities receive the support that they deserve as well.
Councilmember Friedson.
Yeah, I was going to make similar points to what were just made, both by you, Mr. Chair, and by Councilmember Glass, and by Chair Navarro. The equity emphasis areas are significant. This 20% is not 50%. It's not 60%. It's not 70%. I would personally have some concerns if the percentage went too high, because there are communities of color, there are areas of the county that aren't encompassed here that we don't want to prevent from the type of upgrades that we want for communities who also need it. But we do need to specifically dig in and lean in to these communities. That was the intention of us putting this forward, and I do think that this helps to satisfy it, and I think that we've struck the right balance here. And we said before, when we made the change to the green energy building tax credit program to include the equity emphasis areas, that it is a connection directly between environmental justice and racial equity and social justice, that we need to connect those two issues. I think that these retrofits will largely help those who would otherwise not be able to be in a building that has these upgrades that do improve health in addition to environmental sustainability and our climate goals. And so this isn't just about reducing emissions, it's about improving quality of life, which is critical that it be focused in a way to support communities in our county that too often have not received the type of investment that we would want, both from the public and the private sector. So I think this strikes the right balance, and I hope we can move it forward. And I think it's a good improvement to this strong proposal.
Thanks. Councilmember Katz.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I too support this. It was well said by all. If we're not spending 20% in those areas, then we should know it. And this gives us another opportunity to make sure that those areas are getting their proper fund. The other way to say this is that not that it has to be guaranteed that the 80% of the funds could be spent other places, but 80% versus 20%, this is a very fair way to do this. So I'm most supportive of it.
Terrific. Anyone else? Councilmember Reamer.
Thanks. I hope my colleagues don't misinterpret my intent here. We're talking about a lot of money and a geographic restriction that is being put on a lot of money, and we want to just make sure we think it can be achieved. So it's a new one. But if my colleagues are confident, my understanding is about 26% of the population lives in these areas. I don't know if that provides some conceptual guidance about it. They don't often have downtowns as much, so there won't be as many commercial projects in downtowns, if that makes a difference. We would not be allowing an affordable housing project in Bethesda to qualify necessarily, but that could be okay under this. It wouldn't count toward this goal, but that could be okay. And as others have said, it seems reasonable enough. So I support this language as well.
Councilmember Friedson, your hand's still up. Is that?
Apologize. It's just because I wasn't looking at myself. I'm lowering it now.
No worries. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please raise your hand. That is unanimous. Okay, great. Mr. Drummer, can you give us the second amendment? I think it's the Reamer amendment, or Councilmember Reamer. You can describe your own amendment. Thank you.
Got it.
Thank you.
Bob, if you could share it to the screen, that'd be.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do.
While we do that, I wanted to ask a question for Mr. Deo, if I could. I believe you said that about 15% of your revenue goes towards administrative overhead or expenses. Can you just clarify that? That seems a bit high in the context of this funding that we're now talking about. So can you share what you expect would be the administrative, absorption of these leverage funds?
Sure. So the 15% factor is what we were provided within the original sort of first 14.1 million. We were offered 15% of that to cover administrative expenses. To date, we've been able to use that plus other grant resources and other interest in program income to cover our expenses. But the program we're talking about here is a substantial increase to the sort of effort that we have underway. And so, 15% is consistent with what the, DC Green Bank has within its offer to sort of operate. And, we have 7 staff, but in order to sort of reach and achieve the goals we have here, we're going to have to, increase that. So, where our offer was to still suggest 15% of that, of the resource in order for us to be able to recruit and hire and execute in the market on this strategy. So that was our proposal.
And is that of the tax revenue that you will receive or the leveraged?
No, that's of the tax revenue. That's, yeah.
Okay. So it's 15% of the 17 or 18 estimated million. And I'm sure the answer to this is yes, but you have worked through with your bond counsel about, the predictability of this revenue source, and that's, can you just talk to us about where the estimates of 60 to 90 million come from, and I would like to hear you say that, the fact that this revenue source can be somewhat fluctuating, it is accounted for. So can you talk to us about that?
Sure. So that leverage capacity is what, we're right now just about 3, just a tad under 3 in terms of our leverage. But that's because we're doing a lot of sort of the lower leverage in order to enter the market on some products. But we would see, making a more broad sort of, leverage out of this. So, we see ourselves getting at least 3 to 1. We see other market players out there getting a higher 4 to 5 to 1. So that's why we put that as our target range. And so that's what we would use in order to enter the market and then use that to invest in, that would be the project financing support that we would be able to lever. As the market fluctuate, or as the tax revenues would fluctuate, we'd obviously deal with that, but we would continue to be able to leverage it. The issue is having a regular, consistent source in order to be able to continue to go out and lever. When we left with a more one-time source, it makes it more difficult to go to the market and lever that to the same degree. And if you're open to it, Bert Hunter is on the line. He might be able to speak to Connecticut Green Bank's experience if that would be a benefit. It's up to you. I agree.
Yeah, maybe if others want, we can come back to that.
Okay.
And I did hear you say it's an annual levy, so that 60 to 90 is per year.
Right.
So that's good. That's a lot. Okay, so this next amendment is one that seeks to align this additional funding, not necessarily, or not using impacting other funding that the Green Bank may have, but seeks to align this existing funding, this new funding, with the important goal of not funding the installation or the installation of fossil fuel infrastructure. It is true that replacing a old, dirty gas, heating system with a cleaner gas heating system will produce a cleaner result, but it's not, private money can pay for that. We're talking here about public money, and we ought to be reaching a little higher and focusing our effort on electrification, installing systems that are not relying on fossil fuels at all. So this is an amendment I've been working on with colleagues and with Chesapeake Climate Action Network and the Sierra Club. And so for my colleagues, it's on the screen ahead of us. Restrictions on county funding. The Green Bank must not use the annual direct appropriations from the county for a project to install a new or substantially retrofitted energy system that uses fossil fuels. So a building can use solar or wind. It can purchase power. It can find all kinds of ways to power itself through clean energy, but we don't want to finance fossil fuel systems that are going to be there for the next 20, 30 years and continue to cause emissions. So I move the amendment on the screen.
Second.
Thank you.
Any discussion? Okay.
Yeah, I just
Councilmember Friedson.
Yeah, sorry. So totally appreciate and I'm supportive of this amendment. I just wanted to ask a clarifying question. We've heard concerns previously about particularly older buildings and some smaller projects and significant improvements that can be made, but that don't necessarily completely change the the existing energy system. And so I was just wondering if we could get a clarification. Would that prohibit any of this to be used for any project, or is it if you are replacing the energy system that you can't replace it with a fossil fuel system? I mean, obviously we want to get out of fossil fuels completely, and I'm very supportive of this. I want to make sure that we're not undermining the social justice goals that we just tried to implement. So I just thought it would be worth it to at least have at least a brief conversation to make sure we're accomplishing what we all intend here.
You're saying, if I understand it, if I may, that, well, would you like to repeat it again? That
Clearly we do not want the Green Bank to be funding a project that puts in place a new system that uses fossil fuels. That is not moving the direction that any of us support or would want. I'm totally for this amendment for the reason of avoiding anything that would do that. I think the question is, if there is a smaller project within an existing building that doesn't perhaps go to the level for cost reasons or other reasons that completely changes the energy system in the building, are there other improvements that could be made with this funding to retrofit to bring down the energy consumption that does have a positive impact? My concern is if we make it that it's only a total replacement of existing energy systems.
Oh, I see what
the
you're
only
saying.
way that the
Right.
money can be used. There's a difference between saying you can't put in place a new energy system that uses
Right.
fossil fuels, then you can only put it in place for a building that has an energy system that doesn't use fossil fuels. And I just want to make sure that we're not excluding
Right.
a huge swath of communities that we most need this help, who we are dedicated to supporting, who we just had a long discussion before to make sure that we're making a focused effort to emphasize.
So
I
in
just
other
want to make
words-
sure that we're not unintentionally doing that. I know that wasn't the intention of the amendment. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page with the language.
So the intent of the amendment is to restrict how the money is used, not to restrict how the building might do something or not do something with other money. So I believe what you're saying is, okay, there's an old building, they want to do a solar system. This money can be used for that solar system. They don't have enough money yet to replace their furnace. So it doesn't mean that the Green Bank can't fund the solar system. The Green Bank can still fund the solar system, even if the building hasn't been able to replace its furnace yet. And I think what you're saying is that true? And I'm saying is yes.
Yeah, if we could just have the Green Bank quickly speak, because I think the solar system, the solar arrays would be, I don't want to say an extreme example, but a significant example where there might be lesser projects that I'm not sure about. So I just want to make, like window replacements and other, types of upgrades. I just wanted to get a sense from the Green Bank in terms of the impact that this would have and what the practical realities would be, particularly on some of the older buildings and some of the particular communities that we want to make sure that we're proactively focusing on and not excluding.
Councilmember Friesen, you asking me to respond?
Please.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yep. So, look, we're in agreement that this is an important, it needs to be a target for the county. We certainly we support the whole concept of electrification. Our efforts have been dedicated, really to making sure that, we save as much energy that's being used out there as possible. In our minds, the cleanest and cheapest energy is that which is not used, right? So, if you don't burn an electron or a therm, you're saving energy. And that's been our motivation and what we've been emphasizing. And we certainly see the electrification in the new construction is where things are going. And that seems to make a great deal of sense. And solar and renewable energy we're investing in, and we want to continue to invest in that because that certainly advances that whole idea towards electrification. We just, on the question that you were asking, Councilmember Friesen, right? We've been working with quite a number of properties in the county, and not every commercial or residential property is actually immediately suitable for the idea of moving to electrification. There's a significant amount of costs that come with that, and some of those properties happen to be a lot of the low and moderate income properties are working, where they have central systems and so forth, and the changeover to there can be considerably more expensive. Our interest is in supporting actions that don't use energy. And, if the green bank financing can be a motivator in which, our lower cost of funds, our ability to make more flexible terms can get, a property that takes out some energy efficiency action versus not taking it, we would want to rather be in a position to sort of helping them make that and take that action. And the other is, if it's not green bank financing and they have a choice to go to something more energy efficient or not, and we can't be a player in that game, there are other alternatives out there. So us being the only one holding a policy of this nature could be, doesn't necessarily mean it achieves the outcome, because there are other players in the marketplace. We certainly support this idea of electrification. We support the idea of, moving in that direction, but the question of whether, the green bank is the right place or this is the right place to have it, rather than having a bigger discussion around this. So, our thoughts are, things move in milestones, things move over time. Energy prices come down, solar energy prices have come down, so that, if you just because you implement something today doesn't mean that you can't change it out when sooner than later. So, our sense here would be, we want to participate in this. We want to sort of get the resources, help move energy efficiency, move energy improvements along, and engage in this longer term policy discussion and see where it can go. And then we can be a player and supporter to it. But, whether that sits right here with the green bank policy or this legislation, it would hamper some of our abilities to sort of participate and support and motivate clean energy or energy efficiency where those properties need it, but maybe they can't move to electrification right now. So we'd want to engage in that policy and that discussion, but we would hope we could get this resource to be as meaningful to the parties out there that are looking to do any kind of and deep energy efficiency improvements and move off of where they are, some of which have 40-year-old systems they're working with.
Thanks. I see other colleagues want to speak to this, so I'll yield back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilmember Katz.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I think the first thing we need to do is get a definition of the word substantial. I think that's necessary. I do believe that you've given good examples. Councilmember Friedson gave good examples of windows. There's examples of insulation. And I'm reminded of the adage that the perfect is sometimes the enemy of the good. And in some of these older buildings, somebody that wants to become more efficient might not be able to afford everything at once. And if they can't use the green bank for the less expensive financing, then that becomes an issue. I agree that we should certainly say, and depending on what the word substantial means, but I agree that we should say that a new installation should only be financed by the green bank. But I do believe that we would be wise to try to get people to get to a more efficient building, even if they have to do it in an incremental way. And if the green bank can be a help in that, I think we would all gain from that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councilmember Glass.
Thank you. So the amendment specifically states fossil fuels. And I know we're trying to come up with examples, but windows are not fossil fuels. And the reason I seconded this amendment is because private financing can be used for private use for whatever that building owner wants to do. But these are public funds, and we should not be using taxpayer funds to support the continuation or the expansion of fossil fuel projects. That's quite simply what this comes down to. A building owner, again, can use their funds, leveraged, however, for any of their needs, but these are public funds. And if we truly believe that the goal of this legislation and this funding is to reduce our carbon footprint, which is what I believe it is, then we have to make sure our actions fit those words, and this amendment does that. I yield back.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Reamer.
Thank you. Yeah, Councilmember Glass said it well. This is only applying to the energy system. So it does not put a constraint on windows, That's not an energy system. Other endeavors, it's just the energy system. So it is a targeted component. And I think Councilmember Friedsen's initial question was to ensure that it would not prohibit those kinds of funding for those kinds of projects, and it won't. It's just constraining, as Councilmember Glass said, how we invest in energy systems, HVAC, furnaces, things like that. Thanks.
Thanks. Anybody else?
If
Councilmember
I
Cass.
could just, for 1 second, are we saying that an energy system does not include, it only includes the furnace or whatever, that it doesn't include anything that would be the insulation or the windows? Are we in agreement on that? Because to me, the system, the insulation and whatnot is part of the system. It's not part of the furnace.
It's not our intent to, include insulation in the energy system.
So does the word system clarify that what we're talking about?
Well, I suppose I could ask Bob, was there a particular reason you use that word or those words as opposed to other words?
I think those are the words you asked me to use.
That's a good reason.
So he changed the system on you, is what he did.
But a window doesn't use fossil fuels, right?
No, it doesn't, but it's a part of the system that does.
Well,
No, is there another name for energy systems or energy power plant or energy?
I mean, it has to consume fossil fuels. That is a qualification here.
We say it that way,
Well, it says that uses fossil fuels, so
but it doesn't say that. Well,
I mean, this would preclude you from
you could say machine. You could say
putting in
machine.
a more efficient gas furnace, so to speak.
You could say machine or combustible machine.
Could change system to machine. I was thinking.
We could say fossil fuel consuming energy. Again, what we're trying to get at, I think, is machines.
right.
To sort of to your point, Sydney.
The mechanics.
Yeah, we're trying to get at the equipment.
Also,
You'd say
elements,
mechanical energy system that uses fossil fuels.
fossil fuels.
I was going to ask if system or machine or any of these things are defined in county and state law. Could we vote for it in principle and then allow Bob to come back to it? This is just a joint committee. We could allow Bob, in his decades of experience, to come back to us in full council with a recommendation.
How about appliance? Not that we're
Yeah,
trying to wordsmith this now, but
somewhere is a mechanic laughing.
Yeah,
at us.
we could put a placeholder around system and vote for the concept and then let Bob advise us in full council.
Yeah.
I agree with that, but Tom might be able to. His hand is up, and
Tom's
he
hand,
might have
Tom,
the answer.
the other Tom, please chime
The
in.
other, both Toms.
Straighten us out.
So I was on a different point, but I think that we could work out what the language is there. But I was given the where the market is and where the sort of trend line is, and to move 100% at once. Is there a way to think of stepping this along as well? And is there a way to sort of suggest that there's a progression of this not used component so that we can continue to sort of support activities that are underway now that might be going, but then move in this direction as electrification itself moves in this direction. Sorry, may I just offer that up?
I would love you to suggest maybe some language that we can consider in full council that isn't, strictly prohibitive in every single project. Because to me, the goal, and we've dealt with this in other legislation, like when county executive, suggested solar panels on every single house, whether or not they're shaded by trees or not. And the counter suggestion was maybe we should let energy auditors suggest what's the best thing for the climate, whether it's solar, geo, or something else for that particular building. We could be driven project by what does the most for the climate. I think we're all agreed on the goal. The goal is to reduce our carbon, do the best for the climate, and it might not be putting one solution in front of another if there's a limited number of things available. And you and Bob could probably workshop that in the next few days.
Sure. That would be, thank you.
I don't know if that's helpful, but yeah.
I just suggest that if you're going to approve this amendment, I have to combine it with the other one that you've already approved. So we'd start with this language and then add the language from the other one.
To say that
the Green Bank must not use money for this. The Green Bank must use 20% of its money for this and 15% for that.
with an and. Okay.
So I would combine it into one, in the bill itself. It's two separate amendments here. But
Right. Okay.
If I, sorry.
Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, so the way it's written, project to install a new or substantially retrofitted appliance. So is it the appliance that's substantially retrofitted, or is it the project that is undertaking substantial retrofitting? So, I would see this as projects that are new projects that are installing mechanical energy equipment, right?
Correct.
Okay. Sound fine, Councilmember Reamer?
Say that again. What I was hearing is that maybe we don't need the word substantially retrofitted. That if we say install a new mechanical energy appliance that uses fossil fuels, that really,
Because I know that you actually, Tom Deo maybe can explain this, but I don't know that you're going to be financing a project that simply makes rehabilitates an existing gas furnace.
I see. So the order substantially retrofitted doesn't work with where it sits.
If you just said to install a new mechanical energy appliance that uses fossil fuels.
I think we're trying to cover installation, not repair, right?
Right.
Right. So I bet everybody agrees on what the goal is here, to get the greatest carbon reduction for each project. And you can tell us whether it should say appliance or project or system.
So can I just say, I think I understand a little better. We're also concerned about money being used to upgrade a fossil fuel system. So that's what that substantially retrofitting. Retrofitting is not about insulation or windows. It's intended to be about the actual mechanical device.
Are there retrofits that aren't replacements?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Does somebody upgrade a furnace without just putting in a new one?
Right. I don't know how you keep the old one around.
Not in my expertise area. It's possible you could make them burn cleaner. I don't know.
And if I could add to this, and well, just real quick, I have concerns about what metrics might or might not be used here. What would we consider an upgrade if we were to go down that path? 100% oil burner or something, if it only then uses 75%, that's still a lot of fossil fuel. So I share that concern.
Right. I bet we're all talking about replacements here. Steve, you're the expert. Guide us.
Sorry, I just was hoping to provide some clarity to the conversation. And so it seems like your office, but mentioning the energy system, if you take a look through the new IGCC, really everything is going to fall under an energy system for a property. And so I just wanted to clarify that, although you've already changed it to appliance. And then in terms of being clear about what is being supported for new versus retrofit. Retrofit would typically include the discussion of putting in a new boiler, for example, if you're talking about that system that utilizes fossil fuels. So something known as a retrofit could be putting in a new boiler. However, most of the projects that we see, if they're doing a retrofit with a new system, it's a new system to reduce the GHGs. There are high efficiency boilers out there. And so, what we've seen is there's still a market gap there for those high efficiency boilers. And if somebody's doing a retrofit without that push to the high efficiency boiler, then they typically will move back to one that's 50, 60% efficient instead of 90% efficient. So there is some semantics there that hopefully that helps with.
So you could help us with the language too for the full council, right? Councilmember Katz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with your assessment that we vote this. We all know what we want to do. We just can't figure out how to say what we want to do, and let the experts come up with the language for full council.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, we have I think a lot of agreement and a surfeit of expertise and time. So for abundance of expertise and not enough time. Councilmember Raymer.
Final comment. As much as I appreciate what Mr. Morrell said, that, a building owner might be willing to do a 90% efficiency system, but without some support might fall back to a 60% system. I do think we ought to put the public dollars towards 100% systems. And so I don't think we want to finance that. We want owners who are willing to make the full leap here and stop burning fossil fuels. So, that's what we are seeking to accomplish. Thanks.
So Steve and Tom, do you think you could work with Bob to give us some language that gets to that goal?
Yes, we can work with Bob across these matters. Yep.
Great. Okay. All right, so with that understanding, all those in favor of this amendment, please raise your hands. That's unanimous. Okay, and with this two amendments that will be combined into one amendment, all those in favor of the amended bill. The bill is amended.
No.
Councilmember Glass.
Could I just, could I,
Sure.
before you do this?
Let's do Councilmember Glass first, and then.
Okay.
Thank you. I have a bunch of questions that we haven't addressed here. So,
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
So I think the conversation that we just had really is the heart of I think the bill, right? What is the goal of the bill? And the goal of the bill, I don't think, is to retrofit oil burners to allow a building owner to get a better, shinier oil burner that might use less oil. I think it is to help us bend the curve in this climate crisis and absolutely reduce, not incrementally, but begin the real hard work of reducing our carbon emissions here in Montgomery County. And so I was for the stronger amendment. I guess it'll come back at full council and we can have this conversation again. But starting at the top, I just have a few different questions that I guess the Green Bank, Mr. Deo can answer, and anybody else who wants to jump in. It was alluded to before about the 15% of resources that you all use for administrative purposes, and currently you have 7 employees. And so I'm just curious, with the infusion of this type of funding, how do you see the operations of the Green Bank increasing? How many new employees do you think you'll have to hire?
So if we look at benchmarks, the DC Green Bank is at about 15 and they're hiring a couple more, right? And they've got a similar level of an appropriation to sort of support them. And as we get this resource and we're trying to be flexible in the market, we need to bring in the talent in order to sort of do that underwriting more directly. Right now, we're leveraging a lot in the private market to do that. So we're going to need to take some of that in. That's a certain level of professional that we need to hire into the marketplace. The other is, right now we have one person as a business operations manager. The more of a bigger portfolio we would have, the little bit more we would need in the back office operation to support that. And then, clearly, taking what was just presented here and sort of promoting and getting traction in the area of, the electrification, the equity sort of spaces, that's going to require some dedicated resources to go out there. So I can see us growing to about that, probably, doubling our size to manage all those pieces is about where we would be, right? So I assume we somewhere between 15 and 20 is sort of what we is expecting, which be consistent with what we're seeing with the other green banks with similar levels of capacity.
Sure, good. That's a good landscape analysis on peer organizations throughout the country. So I'm glad you have that information. And with regard to what would essentially double the size of the funding, right? Not only double the staff that you just referenced, but doubling the size. Do you think that the current structure of the board would need to change in any way?
It's a pretty darn good board, and
Not saying it's not good. I know that they are a hardworking board. I've looked at the number of the individuals who serve on your board, but wondering if the structure would need to change or increase.
So it's an independent board. It's a board that makes that decides on its resources and how it staffs itself, but. I don't think, maybe there needs to be a few more, but I think, from a capacity, they're pretty, pretty deeply committed board. So the charter does spell out the type of participation we have, and we've been matching up against that. So.
And again, I will make it clear for everybody. They are hardworking, they are smart, they are dedicated board. And I see that the Director of Finance and also the Director of the Department of Environmental Protection, or at least the spot, is on your board. Is that in your bylaws that those positions? Good.
Yeah, those are two ex officio positions specifically identified in our charter. Yes. Fantastic.
Because with the again, the level of investment that the county is making, I'm glad to know that county leaders and administrators are serving on that board. So we're talking about the parameters of using this funding, and again, understanding the give and take and not wanting to make sure that the money goes to waste, right, or isn't used because we're too stringent on it. I understand that concern, but what would happen if there is money left over? If, given the 15% and the 20% parameters that in the Friedson Amendment we just approved, and then depending on the verbiage of this other amendment regarding fossil fuels, what if at the end of the fiscal year there are funds left over?
So the way we look at funds is we create capacity and then build the capacity in it. So, the leftover funds is an unusual term because in a way you're sort of filling the bucket as you build it, right? So that's what we would be looking to do. And if it spilled over to the next year, it just means our pipeline is taking on into the next year. So I think we would keep rein on that. Our board is pretty strong about making sure that we're actively using our resources, and we have to report to them on a very regular basis that we're doing so. So I would say that we have guidance on us and oversight on us to do so. So, Steve, I don't know if you want to talk to that. You're the one managing that pipeline. So.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think the only thing I could add is that portfolio management is never completely even. That the type of deals that we work on are fairly lumpy, and sometimes somebody will work on something for over a year. Sometimes it happens within the matter of a few months. As we add capacity, and particularly people that can focus on not just the direct lending, but the underwriting side that could build into other institutions' underwriting, then we can drive the bus a lot more to be able to push that. So we do have a pipeline, and we manage it based off of what our initial prospects, early stage type work that we're doing, what's under diligence, what's under approval already in our governance structure, and then what's getting closed. So there's pretty clear insight of where things stand in that process, and we usually have a good eye to how much are falling within that bucket of the capacity systems that we've created.
And so what you've shared with us is your cash flow and the investment strategies that you're making, right? And some of them are long term or longer than the course of a fiscal year. But the reason I asked is because we are requiring equity emphasis areas take up 20% of the funding, right? And 15%, right? And so here we're going to get ourselves caught up in that it might not be that allocation and that breakdown within a fiscal year because they might be longer term investments. So we're going to need to figure that one out.
And if I may, I would just say, because we had just as a one-time investment, we've been managing that to sort of find the right places to put it and the right terms associated with it. With a recurring investment, we now will be more active in the market because we can be more tailoring of that investment. So we can actually deploy it faster, more because we know we're getting more, we can sort of keep filling that pipeline and keep deploying it. So if that 20% is oriented there, that's what we're going to be focusing a lot of attention to try to find the projects in order to deploy that capital. And we, our aim would be to use that resource as it came along. It does take some time. It may be in a commitment and then it might close a little bit later, but we would try to make sure that we can see where that bucket is filling, right? So
good, because as long as you're able to define where that allocation is going, we're going to be asking. Yeah, right, because we're all committed to this and just want to make sure that it is being used. So I appreciate your response there. Then the last question is directed to Mr. Coveyou, who I see here, who is an ex officio member of the board. But I've seen the correspondence that he and the executive have sent over. And because this is the T&E and GO committee, I do have to ask, this is a large commitment from the county. It's a commitment I think we have to make, absolutely. We are in a climate crisis, so there's no doubt about that. But what is the financial implication for making this decision at this time?
That's a really interesting question, Mr. Glass. The immediate implication is that the executive is going to have to find $17.5, $18 million in current spending that is not going to happen next year in some other areas. The executive, as you noted from the testimony that Ms. Hochberg provided a couple days ago, is very much in favor of properly funding the Green Bank. And again, I am one of the 3 board members that are actually in this meeting, along with Mr. Hunter and Ms. Hochberg. But having it in legislation is a double-edged sword. It's good for the Green Bank from an investor's perspective. If they're going to be issuing debt, they would have a relatively stable revenue stream in order to defease the debt, pay off the debt. It is sort of, as Mr. Drummer's packet noted, and I'm speaking as the finance director, as you noted, it's sort of outside of what we normally do with programs like this, which compete with other programs. There's nothing wrong with making the bold statement that the county council intends to spend $17, $18 million a year providing funding to the Green Bank, but having it in legislation takes away a little bit of budget flexibility for you and for the executive, of course. It binds future county councils. I know that it can be reduced in the future. If it needs to be reduced in the future, but it's harder to do that when it's legally mandated in the county code.
Well, I appreciate that response.
For reference, sure. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but the way I look at it, it's a penny on the weighted average property tax rate. Which is right around $1. So if you want to look at it that way, it's a significant amount of money. It's something where I, as somebody who lives really in the fiscal policy world, I like to see circuit breakers or pressure valves, so that if the circumstances that you noted just a few minutes ago were to arise, you could shift funding to maybe something that DEP is doing, or to DGS projects, or to HOC projects, or something like that. I'm more comfortable not having mandates like this in the law that bind us all. But honestly, for issuing debt for the Green Bank, if they were to issue debt, this is actually better for their debt. It just takes away some budget flexibility from the county council, today's council, future councils, today's executive and future executives.
A thorough response, one that I always expect from you. And the reason I asked is because we need to go into this eyes wide open, in full clarity of what this means this year, future budgets as well. But it's also important to share with our residents and property owners the commitment that is being made. And it is a substantial commitment, even by your own estimate. And the pressure valve that you would normally like to see in this type of spending, I would counter and say that the pressure is being applied to us as citizens of this planet by Mother Earth and by the climate change that is occurring all around us. And so there is no escape one way or the other. And so this is our commitment to a greener future, a greener community, but needed to include this in the record of this conversation. I see you raised your hand, but okay, Mr. Covey, you want to continue?
Yeah, you raise a good point again, and I would only say that the part of the flexibility that you're taking away is to use the money for other things related to environmental things that the Green Bank doesn't have anything to do with. This is money that all goes to the Green Bank, and it's very likely enough money to go to the Green Bank. It's possible that it could be more money in 6 or 7 years than the Green Bank could use in a year. So that's all.
Sure. And so I'll just conclude because I know that we have a T&E session after this to talk about physical infrastructure and the ways that we're going to improve energy efficiency there. But according to our own reports, the physical infrastructure accounts for 52% of the carbon emissions here in the county. And so by investing this in the Green Bank, we are trying to bend that curve. And this council, just as recently as last week or the weeks before, we're tackling the transportation sector that accounts for nearly 42% of carbon emissions. And so there is no shortage of sectors here that need support. But I think that what we've been demonstrating in the last few weeks is that we're committed to tackling all of them as best as we can. And so I appreciate the sponsors of this legislation. I support this now. The reason I did not co-sponsor it is because I had these questions I wanted to ask. Now that I've asked them, I'll yield back to the chair. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Covey and Director Covey, and thank you, Councilmember Glass, for your very thoughtful words. Yeah, I mean, obviously, this is something, having been through a whole lot of county budgets, this is something I thought about at introduction. I'm sure Councilmember Friedson, with the budget black belt that he has, thought about as well. And the way just a few thoughts on Mr. Covey's point of view. The CE and the council will only obviously have to find new revenue if our revenue is flat. And revenue, in fact, right now is not flat. It's been rising, thank goodness. As I said at the introduction, the energy tax, and I think none of us were on the council when it was passed, was promised to sunset. We've all heard that gripe from the business community, but sunsetting it is impractical, and the next best thing is to use those dollars to not only address our climate emergency, but to save all our businesses and tenants money that they now spend on their utility bills and that they'll be happy to save in the future. I was here, and most of our colleagues were, when we declared a climate emergency 4 years ago. And we have made very little progress, unfortunately, and it's in the last several years, and it's very important that we treat it like an emergency, not as a climate worry. And Councilmember Glass, and Director Covey, you're damn right. It's outside what we normally do. That's the whole point. During emergencies, you're supposed to do things. We all do things that are outside what we normally do. When your home is on fire, you call 911. You don't put it on the to-do list on tomorrow's calendar. So, Mike, I appreciate you saying that there's nothing wrong with making a bold statement. I think of this as not just a statement by the council, but a commitment. And certainly, obviously, it will raise revenue over time by both reducing the money that our residents are paying to Pepco and to other energy providers, but also by creating jobs and revenue that the county will recoup in our tax dollars. So I think it's well thought out. It's even better now that all of you and the Joint Committee have thought about it, and I'm excited about where we are. Councilmember Novato.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be brief. I was here when the energy tax was increased. County Executive Leggett made that proposal because of issues around the recession. He did promise that it would be reduced. The council had not made that promise, but the council did work on reducing it. Nonetheless, this is a really important and almost historic moment because it is then taking that revenue and directing it and providing some certainty for these types of projects and investments. And so, yes, it's a little bit different, but as I've said 1,000 times, especially after this pandemic, we've learned that we cannot continue to do business as usual. And to me, this is a worthwhile, bold step. And as it was stated earlier as well, revenues are not going in the opposite direction. So to me, I think this is a innovative way of addressing some of the needs that we have. And so just want to put that on the record as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Friedson.
Yeah, well, I appreciate this conversation. Really appreciate the partnership, Chair Hucker, on putting this forward. We both have thought a lot about it. In fact, I think our first conversation to discuss the possibility of this was about 6 or 9 months before the pandemic started, maybe even longer before that. I mean, this is about 2.5 years in the making, and lots of conversations with subject matter experts and advocates and the Green Bank and county officials. But I do think, number one, we there was a promise. I will not challenge somebody who was in the room and sitting at the dais.
I was here.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah. But there were promises from senior officials in Montgomery County. I will not say all senior officials and elected officials, and perhaps it was only the county executive, but there have been widespread expectation that this was done in response to the recession, that there was going to be a reaction to that. And then we've gotten adjusted to the new reality, whether we were right, whether we were wrong, whether that's the appropriate approach or not. And this is a commitment that is being made that if we are going to continue with this, that it ought to be reinvested in the people we're asking to commit to this. And we ought to make it a little bit easier for folks to do what we're asking them to do, which is beyond the fuel energy tax. I will also say that the amount of money we collect from this should go down over time as energy consumption goes down over time, particularly gas, fossil fuel, because that is part of what we are collecting this based off of. And so, in campaigns, there's a saying that you want to organize yourself out of a job, and hopefully, long term, we can basically fund climate solutions out of the need for energy taxes based on fossil fuels and revenue. Until that point, and we are nowhere close to meeting the standards that we have set for ourselves, we need to make serious commitments to make it happen. And I do think that putting this into law is critical because we need to follow through on it, and we need to allow the Green Bank to leverage the funds as we talked about. That's what makes this, from a significant commitment of resources to a potential game changer in terms of our ability to meet our climate goals, the ability to leverage those funds, as Mr. Covey noted, is the entire secret sauce to making these funds spread as far as they can to reach these goals. So I really appreciate the conversation today. Really appreciate us moving forward on this. I hope it is just a down payment on the efforts that we're going to move forward in the coming months and years, and certainly we need to. So thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Reamer.
Thank you. Good discussion. I just wanted to ask Ms. Hochberg. You did testify and appreciate that, and express that county executive felt like this was not the time to make this commitment, that you agreed that it was important to support the Green Bank, but when it came to dedicating a stream of revenue, you were just concerned that there were other fiscal priorities that might need to apply. Would you want to wanted to at least give you a chance to express the administration's view here?
Sure. Thank you for the opportunity. I'll start by saying that the county executive is a strong supporter of the Green Bank and recognizes the Green Bank's important role in helping the county to meet our climate goals and implement the climate action plan. So he supports the legislation. He did offer a number of amendments. One was along the lines of what Director Coville stated around the revenue picture. Is that in that the bill as written does not identify how a funding gap would be backfilled. And so he recommended waiting until the state income tax revenue picture becomes available in a few months to have a better understanding of what a revenue picture looks like. He also recommended that these funds, if the council chooses to move forward at this time without waiting for the revenue picture, that these funds be split between the Green Bank and other county climate needs, including the county's climate change non-departmental account. So there is a lot that the Green Bank already does to leverage private sector funds. That is a critical role to play. But there are a number of county departments that work on other climate initiatives that also need additional funding support. These includes things around the need to address flooding issues in the county, which have been getting worsened with climate change. And, this is just a tip of the iceberg, as well as increasing the county's climate adaptation and preparedness capacity, transforming our community engagement approaches to prioritize vulnerable communities, increasing our climate governance capacity within the county. That includes grants administration, green procurement policies, more climate change training, and I can go on, but just wanted to give some examples of the flavor of needs that we have to fund in out years related to climate change.
Thanks. All right, I see Mr. Drummer has his hand up, Mr. Chair.
Drummer.
Just real quick, I just thankful that Councilmember Glass brought up his questions to talk about the budget. I just wanted to point out that the council, even in the statute, can find future councils as far as the budget is concerned. And I believe you know that, but I just want to make sure everybody who's watching knows that the council could make changes in the allocation to the Green Bank for that year in any particular budget, in the operating budget. And that would override this bill for that year only, wouldn't repeal the bill. Thank you.
Yep. Well said. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. We have an amended bill before us. All those in favor of the amended bill, please raise your hand. Okay, that is unanimous. Thank you all to the GO committee for joining us. T&E colleagues, can we take a 5-minute break before we resume our T&E meeting? Okay, great. Thank you so much. I'll see you very soon.
Thanks,
GO committee. Appreciate all your help.
Thank you.
Thanks to all our staff.